Hello, everyone. Hello. Dr. Judy here. Dr. Judy, WTF, what the Freud? And I want to start by asking you all a question, since narcissism seems to be such a big topic and certainly a reason people literally flock to therapy, because it takes such a long time to figure out the system gone wrong and how we get caught in a web of everything. We'll discuss the web. The web is not a very pretty one. How many of you out there who have been raised by narcissistic parents or parents with narcissistic traits, and I shall describe the continuum because it is a continuum, think that you are going to change your parents? And that is what the show is all about today. Can you change your parents with all the love and the empathy and intelligence and desire and everything that you try to do? Because ultimately we want parents. And narcissistic parents may be our parents, but certainly they are not fulfilling the role of parents. And tonight I'm going to do a lot of connecting the dots between a lot of themes about grieving, themes on what is a parent and how the system goes awry and how that impacts the children and adult survivors of narcissistic system gone wrong, because I am a systems thinker. And for those of you who do not know me, my name is Dr. Judy Rosenberg, and I am the founder of the mindmap system for healing human disconnect and author of Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. And this book is available in paperback. You can order it, or you can get a free PDF of it just by asking, and I'm happy to give this to you. You can also have a free consultation with staff members to find out more about the mind map system of healing. I also am the director of the Psychological Healing Center, and I have a beautiful staff of people who speak English and obviously Spanish, Vietnamese, and I do speak enough Hungarian to get by with doing therapy. I would say 20% English, 80% Hungarian for those of you who need that. I know that's going to be a rare person, but there it is. And we're always expanding to cover topics on grieving. We now have a new grief counselor, Zalman Raksin, who has appeared on a couple of shows, and Yitz Epstein, who does a lot of work with narcissistic recovery, and he's going to be starting some webinars, so look out for that. And then we have our beautiful staff of people, Jillian Sorkin, MFT, who works a lot with young adolescents, and then Dr. Perry, who works very much with young adults in any age group. He's been with the center for a long time. And then we have Dr. Tracy, and she's been with me for a long time. She works a lot with families. And then our newest addition, Edward Gonzalez, who speaks Spanish. So there we have it. So let's just jump into this topic of, can your narcissistic parent change? And how hopeful is the situation? So let me start by talking about, what is narcissism? How does narcissism develop? How does it show up? How does it show up as an injury? And I have a lot of information tonight. And most importantly, I'm here to answer questions and to help you connect the dots and understand how this particular dis-ease, as I like to call it, savages and ravages your life and what you can do about it. And so this is a call-in show, everyone, and that number is 323-843-2826. So let's start with the mind map as a pathway to explaining childhood wounds, how we react to them, how we encode them, how they create chaos in our lives, how we defend against them, and how they ultimately break us down. And then part 3 of this encode, decode, recode process is paradigm shifting out of all this mess, seeing clearly, understanding what you're facing, and then ultimately choosing yourself. See that little button over there? Please click it and you will receive help 24/7. As number one, putting yourself first, putting your emotional needs first. So from a mind map perspective and a systems gone wrong perspective, the way I view narcissism is a system gone wrong where instead of the parent vying for the emotional well-being of the child, the parent is actually serving him or herself to have that child meet his or her emotional needs. And this can take many, many forms. It can take the form of being a controlling parent, or can take the form of being a parent that is ignoring the child. It can be in the form of demeaning, devaluing, and destroying a child. I have heard it all in my practice, and there are many, many scenarios that people bring to the clinic that pains them. And at the end of the day, it is so painful to have a narcissistic parent, because we look to our parents to self-define, and we look to our parents to be parental, to nurture us, to have our backs, to be in partnership with our physical, psychological, spiritual growth. And in the case of a narcissistic parent, the reverse is so, that we're supposed to be in the service of their emotional needs. And so this creates a lot of confusion. As you can imagine, it creates a lot of people pleasing on the part of the child who wants to please that parent, thinking that if they please the parent, then ultimately they will be loved and they will be nurtured. It's just that these people hardly, if ever, change, depending on how severe the psychopathology. So let me talk about what is narcissistic personality disorder in a kind of a global way. Narcissistic personality disorder really is an exaggerated form of a grandiose sense of self-importance, a person who's obsessed with him or herself, selfishness, self-motivation, trouble with healthy, normal relationships, furious if criticized, has fantasies of unbound success, power, intelligence, love, and beauty. And I'm looking at these definitions and also adding a few of my own, which are that they're really more interested in their own emotions than the well-being of the child, and they may resort to demeaning, devaluing, destroying, and even discarding their children emotionally, and sometimes even physically, if they don't meet their expectations and needs. And of course, there are other qualities or lack thereof that goes with the exaggerated form. Taking advantage of others, feeling entitled, zero empathy or very little of it, arrogance, envious of others. So that describes the narcissistic parent. So if you are raised in this kind of climate, then number one, you might feel that this is normal. This is just my family. These are just my parents. What do you mean there's something wrong? And it may take literally decades and a lifetime, and sometimes for some people never, to understand that there really is something wrong and what the Freud is going on here. And I think that because of the internet, because of the podcasts and the YouTubes and the awareness of narcissistic abuse and recovery, and please do tune in to Yitz Epstein's webinars and podcasts on narcissistic recovery. He truly is very knowledgeable and has a good take on the system gone wrong. And understand that it is something that people are blindsided by and sometimes never wake up to, except again, there's so much information out there that if you start Googling narcissistic abuse and narcissistic abuse recovery, you will see that there's a lot of information out there. Unfortunately, it's somewhat of an epidemic. Hello. Hi, who am I speaking with?
This is Heidi in Pittsburgh.
Hi, Heidi. How are you? Thank you for calling in.
Good. Thank you. Hi.
Nice. Yes.
Is this Dr. Judy?
Yeah, it is. You are on the proverbial couch with Dr. Judy. So tell me a little bit
Okay.
about what inspired the call and how do you relate to the topic?
Okay. Well, I'm listening to you talk. I guess I'm getting confused with the broadcast that I'm watching and talking to you right now. So
okay.
I'll ignore the computer. So, you were talking about it taking decades.
Yes.
And, possibly taking decades to figure this out.
Yeah.
My question or observation or both is that I have literally been in therapy for 40 years. I mean, starting in my early 20s, doing nearly every popular self-help book that was out there, every spiritual book, all of the workbooks.
Yep.
And until I understood and just heard 2 weeks ago about this concept of narcissism, it never, this has been a huge, huge game changer. And I guess, I'm taking the steps and I'm going to deal with it, but I'm blown away by how different this is from all the other, 40 years of work I've done.
Okay, so, this is something that obviously I'm very concerned about in my own profession. There's not enough knowledge about narcissism and the effects of narcissism. And I think that many modalities of therapy concentrate on symptoms and not enough on the cause. And as you can tell by my videos, or I don't know if you've read any of my book, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect. Have you had a chance to download it?
Yeah, I'm halfway through it, and I'm listening to podcasts, and I don't have enough time to take it all in right now.
Okay.
I'm absorbing everything, yes.
Okay, that's wonderful that you're absorbing it, because the more you absorb, the more your eyes open. And it's also painful, eye-opening experience, because who wants to think that their parents were less than great parents, and who wants to put themselves in a situation where they may have to start setting boundaries, and sometimes some pretty severe boundaries with very, very abusive parents. And there are some very abusive parents that cannot, we cannot be too much, or if at all, in their presence, because they're much too injurious. And I'm going to get into contact versus no contact again. I've covered that area before, but Heidi, it don't feel too alone in this. It takes so much information to have that aha moment, like, oh my God, what the Freud is going on? Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and the twist on it is like, it took me a while to wake up to the fact that I didn't have a perfect family. So I've understood that my family was dysfunctional and that there were relationship problems between mom and dad and me. And, I've seen that. And this is a level that is like unbelievably different from all of that.
okay.
That's
So
blowing me
when did you start waking up, and what's blowing you away?
See that little button over there. Please click it and you will receive help 24/7.
Well, I think it was in my 20s. I know it was in my 20s when me and a girlfriend sat in a conference room doing the Louise Hay workbooks and the Harville Hendricks workbooks.
Yes.
And, we were reading Marianne Williamson and codependency. And then in my early 30s, I went to a workshop and they said, what do you want? And I didn't even know what she was asking me. So,
good
this
cue.
type of deep, pardon?
No, that's a good cue as to what do you want, as if you have an idea of what you want, because if you've been serving another person, it's what do they want. It's not about what you want. So
Yeah, yes, I'm getting that from the material. I guess I'm just trying to express that all now like seems horrendously superficial, even though I was digging and digging and digging,
okay,
deep
okay,
digging
okay.
for decades. And this is like a different animal.
And what is the animal that you're now seeing that you didn't see before, and how did you wake up to the animal?
Well, I only woke up 2 weeks ago, and it was because of a hypnosis session. I felt that something was still blocking me after all of this work I've been doing, including a lot of spiritual work and chakra work and meditating for 30 years.
Yes.
Okay, so
boy, you
went
have
into
given it an all-time effort. I admire that. Okay.
Oh my gosh, but I guess it's a symptom of having been brought up by narcissists. You're just looking and digging and looking. Something's got to fix this. But yeah, it was a hypnosis session that I won't go into the details. But after that, I was like, what? Like, what are you kidding me? And that is what, like, the person that guided me through it said something about maybe a group for narcissists, and I was like, a group for narcissists? What? So anyway, that was like the big light bulb.
And this was, 2 weeks ago?
Yes, 2 weeks ago.
And then from that point, you just started Googling narcissistic recovery, abuse, and somehow ended up talking to me today. Yes, something like that?
Well, yeah, and I spoke to Yitz, and I listened to his podcast, and I talked to him briefly. And you and I spoke very briefly.
Okay.
But I've been listening to the podcast, and like I lay in bed just listening to these until I fall asleep, because it's just astonishing how different it is from regular problems.
It really is, because you can identify regular problems. They're clear. Okay. This is a real underhanded problem. And I want to, first of all, say that you're listening and listening and listening. My gut sense is that you're trying to anti-brainwash yourself, if you will. Okay. Because you've been lulled into this, perception, and I want to reference a YouTube video idea on grieving the parents you never had, and then I did another one with Salman Raksin, who's our grief counselor, on a similar topic of grieving the parents that you really never had and you wish that you did. And so we wish that we have parents that are nurturing. We wish that we have parents that are empathic. We wish that we have parents who are vying for our best interest. Unfortunately, not the case with narcissistic parents, either full-blown or on the spectrum or anywhere in there. And so if you don't mind me asking, tell me a little bit about your panel 1 wounds. And what I mean by that is the wounds of childhood that you're now awakening to, that you're discovering through YouTube episodes or reading my book or talking to Yitz or myself. What are you aware of that now popped off the page, so to speak?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's okay. So what I'm about to tell you, I have known about myself for years. Okay, so it's just I'm still just blown away by all of this. It's things like, failed relationship after failed relationship.
Yep.
Having my heart broken into a million pieces by a guy that didn't even like me.
Yeah.
Being super high achieving, extremely high achieving, straight A's.
Okay.
Feeling desperately lonely, crying myself to sleep in bed for years and years and years.
Okay.
Just this deep, deep feeling of of like, I can't even explain it. But I mean, just a lostness and an emptiness.
Okay.
So that, I guess that's what you're calling panel 1.
Yeah, that's what I'm calling.
I've been aware of this.
Okay. You just didn't connect the dots, and that's why I think the mind map is so clear in the connect the dots process, because you can see that when we're not nurtured, when we're not made to feel that we're important to number one, when there's a missing there, what we do is we end up chasing similar relationships to the blueprint, which is the cause, which is always mother or father, or the mother-father figures. So there you do it again, the what the Freud, as I like to refer to it. So, so we want to change these people. We're hoping that they're going to change. Why? Because we'd like to come home. We'd like to come full circle. We'd like to heal. The problem is that we're putting our faith into our own healing into people who are incapable of doing that. And I refer you to the YouTube video, The Herder Can't Be the Healer. I really talk very much about that. So there you go again. Okay, so I'm just connecting the dots for you right now, Heidi, that you've been chasing men that don't give a damn about you, similar to the lack of empathy you experienced at home. The hollowness and the emptiness is because you've always serviced their feelings, but they never really connected with yours. So you didn't develop that, what I call good enough internal mother or father object. I'm now referring to object relationship, relation theory. Okay. And so in most therapeutic modalities, they'll describe it, they'll treat the symptoms, they might even cognitive behaviorally adjust the thinking about it. However, very few modalities, I can't think of one modality that has an actual system that basically traces the cause, the reaction, the encoding, the chaos that ensues, and much of that chaos is a loss of sense of self, a loss of not having good enough relationships, and then traces the defense mechanisms, because narcissism is a defense mechanism. If you think about it and you interview your parents, something went horribly wrong with their parenting. So this is multi-generational. Dr. Marie Bowen. So in some sense, they have given up hope on empathy and human connection, and now they have objectified people. So they're living in a world where they have hardened their heart, where they have no empathy and ability to connect because they too were not connected with. So do you see the hand-me-down here? Okay. Oh,
absolutely. And that's been a thing that's been coming up in the past year, I'd say, is I feel like I can't love. Like I feel completely inept. Like I don't know how to, and I can't, and I never will.
Okay.
Like a stone.
Well, that's because if you can't beat them, join them. And I'm not saying that you're a narcissist, but maybe you've developed some narcissistic heart shells yourself just to survive. It is a survival mechanism. So if love means loss, if love means pain, if love means being used, if love means being controlled, if love means being ignored, and instead of love, we now have pining, it creates a chase. Okay, so now you it's not love, it's more of an addiction. You have now a desire for completing the circle where you have an interconnection, but the interconnection, and I'll just graphically refer to panel 7, where truly the model of the mind map is to create a wholeness of being as much as humanly possible, so you come together with another whole being, and instead of vampiring each other, using each other, manipulating each other, or ignoring each other, whatever you're doing, you're truly forming light. You're forming co-creation, you're forming synergy, where you're enhancing each other. And this model has never existed in a narcissistically based family. right? There are flying
Right.
monkeys, there are parents, there's a lot, but there's no co-creation. There's no co-anything other than an emphasis on bettering or appeasing the parent, pleasing the parent, and so on. Okay, so is this
Yeah.
beginning to be more clear to you? Is it clearing up your cracked lens of perception, as I like to call it?
See that little button over there. Please click it and you will receive help 24/7.
Oh yeah. It's been a huge watershed moment in my life, and I also realized that my sister is a worse narcissist than my mom was.
Well, this is
And
another. Go ahead. Sorry.
Just that, and again, this has just happened in the past 2 weeks as well. Just everything is kind of tumbling and unraveling quickly. I want to say something though. That kind of something miraculous has happened.
Okay.
I kept journals since I was 20, and I mean many journals. Like I had dozens of journals, and last year I made the decision to burn them all.
Wow.
And
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So, but oddly enough, I kept about 10 pages. And when I was listening to your radio program earlier tonight about the one you did last week about the grieving the narcissistic parents you didn't have, and there was a poem at the end, and I ran upstairs and I thought, I wonder if I kept that one poem, of what it was. So here I pull out the stack of papers, and Dr. Judy, I have like 7 or 8 poems that I wrote from the depths of despair, that I can't believe that everything I burned, that I kept these. It almost feels like something in me knew that this was going to happen. These poems I wrote 10 years ago, and I burned everything else I had that written, and I have these poems they're soul crushing.
Wow.
But they explain the depth of the pain. And I kept them.
Wow.
So, yeah. So anyway,
we're remarkable, aren't we, in our instincts and our ability to desire to grow, and maybe even our ability to keep something that reminds us of where we've been and how soul crushed we've been, just to say, I am my own enlightened witness. It really did happen. I really felt that way. It wasn't a figment of my imagination. And so maybe you needed to have that to remind yourself. And now look where you are. You're growing. You're confronting the system gone wrong. I don't know where you're at with contact versus no contact with your parents. May I ask, what did you decide to do with all of this? Your sister, your parents, everything.
I started minimizing contact with my mother years and years ago.
Okay.
It was minimal, and if I was with her, I had to be really conscious of what was going on, because I always walked away feeling emptied out.
Yes.
So years ago, I started protecting myself somewhat. But not understanding really why, maybe just some from the other self-help I'd done. But I recently, did an all-out trip with her, and it was like the trip of a lifetime for her. And before I had gone, I had this feeling like, after this, I am done. I don't know why. I'm so done. I just can't anymore. I can't.
Okay.
So
wow.
I think the result, so then, we went on the trip, and then I had this huge revelation, this aha, about this narcissism. So I've decided, it's going to be minimal, it's going to be cordial, I'm going to be much more aware. I became aware of the very, very subtle things that she does. and just rip the rug out from under my feet. They're so subtle, you can hardly see them.
And that's the problem.
But
They're so subtle. It's not like she beat you or, or something very unsubtle like that. It's that slow chipping away at who you are, and that control, or that ignoring, or just kind of not mirroring you, not giving you the feedback that you need to grow. I'm going to go on with some more information here. I'm very impressed with how quickly you started digging in once you started seeing. It was like you're unstoppable, and I will get into contact versus no contact. So thank you so much for calling in, and
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the work you guys are doing. I really love it.
It's an honor.
Thank you.
Okay, you're very welcome. Well, that was, thanks Heidi for sharing, and so this is just so, it's, everyone has their unique story, and when people wake up as Heidi did, they sometimes can't believe their eyes or their lack of perception all along. And I love the fact, Heidi, that you kept that book to be your own enlightened witness. And I think we have another call. This seems to be a topic that is so it's a universal thing. So hello, you are on the couch with Dr. Judy, and what is your name, please?
Hi, Dr. Judy. My name is Robert.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Where are you calling from?
New Jersey.
Okay, and what brings you to this topic in particular?
I wanted to. Well, my father was extremely crazy. Very narcissistic.
Okay.
I've come to terms with why he was the way he was, and he passed away a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of wanted to ask you about like a typical spouse of narcissist. My mother. I've always had I've had like anger towards her.
Yes.
For not doing anything to stop his his abusive behavior.
Absolutely. I call it active omission. I have two concepts I talk about in my book, and you're welcome to a free PDF copy. Just you ask for it and we'll send it along. And for those of you who don't know, I also have a mind map video series that breaks everything down step by step, panel by panel, and teaches you how to connect your own dots and think like a shrink, if you will. So Robert, a lot of people will start their anger process toward the committer, the person who insulted you, the person who yelled at you or demeaned you, or however it went. And then later they wake up. This is the subtlety. Oh, my mom did nothing about it, or my dad did nothing about it, or they enabled it. They actually participated by their non-participatory involvement in being on your side. Okay, and sometimes it takes a while to really get in touch with your anger toward the act of omission. Okay, so did you find that you first got angry at your father and later, or was it how did it go for you?
I always, I felt like, well, my father got crazier and crazier as time went on. Mm-hmm. Especially when his health started failing.
Okay.
And I didn't really. I guess I really started to get a better sense of what was going on when I started reading self-help books. I think the first book I got was Toxic Parents.
Okay. And so what do you mean by a narcissistic father? Because everybody has their own way of seeing the injury. So give examples of his narcissistic treatment of you.
Oh, one of the things was his control freakery. There's so many things. One of the things, I think when I was in middle school, it was really like a very strange marriage to my parents. And at some point he moved out of the bedroom with my mother, and then he was sleeping in my bedroom for at least 5 years.
Wow. And where were you sleeping?
On like a top bunk bed.
You were on top of the bunk bed and he was on the bottom of the bunk bed?
Yeah, and it's, now that I'm an adult, it's, it's just looking back, it's like a situation that I would never dream of doing if I had a child. I mean, he almost made me like a surrogate spouse.
Okay, so now these are the subtleties, okay? The subtleties are when a parent uses their child as a best friend, as a little husband, a little wife, or just, a surrogate spouse. And so the pressure on the child to be that go-between is tremendous. And so instead of being free to have your childhood and go play and put your attention on your schoolwork and your friendships and anything else, your hobbies, now your attention is enmeshed with the needs of your parents. So it's a robbing of your childhood, and I'm sure now you can see that, yes?
Yes, definitely. And he tried to isolate me from other people and, and just be controlled by him and, meeting his emotional needs 24/7. And you're like his little marionette.
So if you look at the in-depth core of his soul, his psyche, there's a hole in that soul. There's a hole in that psyche. And so with narcissistic parents, they're using the child to fill that hole, because if they don't, they perceive that they're going to have a complete narcissistic collapse, that they're going to implode without that, quote, sick form of nourishment. And I see this in my practice all the time, where I find that different cultures show this kind of level of enmeshment in different ways. Sons that are enmeshed with their mothers, and then the mother goes nuts because they're about to get married, and then they don't know how to do their loyalty. They're loyal to their wife, of course, or their fiance, but then they feel horrible because mom has always basically emotionally sponged off of them. So now the guilt and the shame and so on. And so what was your mother doing during this time where your father was using you as a confidant? And didn't she say anything about, honey, you're not sleeping in the same room with your father. If your father needs to sleep somewhere, let him sleep in the living room. You get your own bedroom. Did she not speak up?
See that little button over there? Please click it and you will receive help 24/7.
Never. She was always very passive, and I think she was always, I think, just preoccupied with her own survival, and she was always, she's always been an ice cold person. I mean, the last 10 years of their marriage, I mean, the marriage was really over. It really wasn't a marriage. I mean, I won't take up all of your time, going into all of his behavior, but I mean, he was abusive emotionally, physically, and sexually. And
to your mother, to you, all of the above?
Yeah, to me. Well, I remember him. He did hit her once. I remember that. I saw.
So you see, you were a monkey in the middle. I'm sure that you didn't want to lose the love of either one of your parents, because children just don't want to do that. No, not many children are going to stand up and say, this is sick, I'm out of here, because where are they going to go, right? There's nowhere to go. So I call it the double dungeon of the double dungeon of darkness effect, where there's no place to go and there's no safe spot to land. And so what do you do? So there are different, you can stay online. I just want to read off the different ways this is expressed. There's substance abuse is also experienced as narcissism, because the bottle or the drug of choice always becomes the child. It's confusing because sometimes people who exhibit these traits are also very kind. They're the leader of the club or the church or whatever. The public image is very, very wonderful, and then the private image is not so wonderful. So it's confusing, and then it also shows up as the emotionally needy parent in your case. And there are just so many ways parents exhibit. There's the engulfing, and then there's the ignoring type. And so there's so many ways a parent could injure a child. The point is that if you wake up to it, you're lucky, because if you wake up to it, then you no longer have to be at the effect of their system gone wrong. And that's why it's so important to recognize the negative core beliefs that are built around this. Oftentimes I hear negative core beliefs that have to do with, I'm unworthy, I don't matter, I don't exist, I'm nothing but a person meant to please others, and so on and so on. And these core beliefs, negative core beliefs, are a result of all of the messages that enter your psyche. I call it that psychovirus that literally makes you psycho. And today I had a few thoughts about that. As I was doing a session with one of my patients, we were discussing learned helplessness. And learned helplessness is something that you learn because you're helpless, because your parents won't let you think independently, because your parents won't let you have your own time and space and so on, because you learn that there's nothing that you can do that is effective agency. And so when you wake up, you learn to be learned helpfulness to yourself. And another concept that came up that I wrote down for tonight's show is the idea that the psychovirus, or this psychovirus that goes in, can't serve without a host. So the more enlightened the host becomes, meaning you and everyone else out there who is hosting these negative core beliefs and lies and misperceptions, the minute we start dismantling the system gone wrong, you're no longer supporting the lie. You're no longer supporting the system gone wrong. And so you're no longer hosting this horrible system that's making you sick. So one thing I also wrote down that I wanted to share with everybody is that as you become healthy, your boundaries become healthier, you set better ways of being, and you start vying for yourself over your parents. So you start reversing the system. So through therapy, the guilt and the shame of not complying with them turns into, wait a minute, I'm entitled in a healthy way to put myself first. I'm entitled not to be my father's counselor or my father's best friend or my mother's husband or whatever it is. So what happens is that as you get healthier, you start walking away from the dysfunction and walking toward your own best interests. So healthy people walk away at whatever level they walk away, and unhealthy people convert to the lies and misperceptions of the system gone wrong. They stay stuck in that, and then they basically buckle under the psychovirus, and that's their world. And so there is a lot of freedom once you start opening your eyes and confronting the lies and the damage and undoing it and taking down this system so that you can start seeing straight and literally being the cause of your own self-healing. Does that make sense? I know I said a lot. Does that make sense to you, Robert?
Yeah, I seem to be the only person, I guess, in this family that is honest, has like a honest picture of the family dynamic.
Yeah.
Like my mother's, she's still, I guess she's still living in like a state of denial.
Yes.
And like a couple of years ago, I confronted her, and just for my own satisfaction, I kind of expected like how she would react, and I confronted her about her, not doing anything to stop my father's behavior or to get away from him, and she had the financial means to to get away from him and get her own apartment or whatever, and she just came up with lame excuses that didn't make any sense.
Yeah,
said,
I figured.
I couldn't control him.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to be with him, blah blah blah. And I said, well, I was a child. You were an adult.
That sounds logical. Okay, what you're being is logical, and just like in my book, Be the Cause: Healing Human Disconnect, I use the metaphor of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, and the metaphors of the Wicked Witch. And since you're a truth lover, throwing truth at someone who is self-serving, someone who's invested in using your emotions to better their life in some way, it's like throwing water at the Wicked Witch of the East or West. I forget which one. But that's what happens, is that either you're going to melt them down, which usually you don't melt them down to the truth. You just melt them down because they can't stand up to the truth. And so they start disappearing because you don't want to engage with them anymore when that Wicked Witch says, I'm melting. So think of your truth as spilling water on them. And they don't want to wake up, because if they wake up, oh boy, they have to confront their own childhood wounds. Many parents just do not, and that's why they're not getting healthy and they're stuck in this place, because they don't want to unravel whatever happened to them. They don't want to look under the psychological hood, so to speak, and confront their emotional pain. So they're stuck. And so this is truly a sad case, because nobody wins. And the only win I know is I'm trying to find, there was such a great quote by Margaret Mahler. I'll see if I can quickly find it. I underlined it for sure, because I thought it was so great. Let me see if I can find this. Okay. All right, here it is. If you are struggling with contact decisions regarding your narcissistic parent or family, please note that recovery does work and makes so much sense. As the late child psychiatrist Margaret Mahler points out, quote, insofar as the infant's development of the sense of self takes place in the context of the dependency on the mother, and I'm talking about healthy dependency, which leads to healthy independence. Okay, I'll say that again. Healthy dependency in childhood leads to healthy independence. Unhealthy is when you're enmeshed, and that's not healthy dependency. The sense of self that results will bear the imprints of the caregiving. That imprint of maternal or paternal narcissism can be redrawn. I'm thinking that she's talking about rebooting the system when the authentic self is brought to the surface and given proper nourishment. And that's what I talk about in panel 7, where you have a paradigm shift out of all that mess. And then you have a chance for reparenting and growth. What could be more important? This newfound self is what we joyfully give back in the form of true love. The legacy of distorted love is then uprooted. So she's talking the same language here, and I have such admiration for her thinking and her work. Dr. Margaret Mahler, psychiatrist. The legacy of distorted love is then uprooted, and authentic, unconditional compassion takes its place. I remain a hopeaholic for the sisterhood and brotherhood out there. Love her quote. So, well said, Dr. Margaret Mahler. I know she's been deceased for many years. Her words live on. And so we've got to take down the false self-parent and tell the truth about our false parent and start telling the truth about the lies and misperceptions and misconceptions that we obviously as children were seduced into, convinced into, we carry around, and now it's time to shed all that. And from a mind map perspective, reprocess the feelings so that they're not stuck in there like poison. Get all the poison out so that you can start to move and grow and free yourself and clear your psycho perception and have a better part 2 outcome for the rest of your life. So
see that little button over there. Please click it and you will receive help 24/7.
Yes, it takes all kinds of forms, and as Heidi pointed out, sometimes it takes decades upon decades, and many people get caught up in all kinds of modalities of therapy. Most of you know my view. If you don't go to the cause of it, you're going to be stuck with managing symptoms. I don't think that's the pathway to healing. You've got to go back to the cause, confront the cause, and dismantle the old system. Robert, do you have a copy of my book, by the way?
No.
Oh, please do call, request, or get on my website, psychologicalhealingcenter.com or drjudywtf.com. That'll take you there and download a copy. And if you can't do it, just call and I'll have my assistant send you the PDF and pay it forward. Any other last minute thoughts or questions? And then I'll move on to my usual shrink that tune.
I think that's good for tonight.
Okay, I really appreciate you calling in. Thank you so much. And yes, my pleasure. Okay, so just a couple of other things. Contact versus no contact. This is Dr. Murray Bowen, systems theorist. I refer to him a lot. He says, less differentiated people, in other words, people who are very enmeshed and dependent and weakened by their injurious parents, are moved about like pawns by emotional tensions. Better differentiated people are less vulnerable to tension. In other words, the more we strengthen internally, the less we are at the effect of. If you take yourself out of the situation without completing your internal growth, you have accomplished less and can remain troubled. So, in other words, if you just go no contact without doing the emotional work, you're going to be riddled with shame and guilt, and it's not the way to go. Before you make any decision, become aware, do the work, get some objectivity, dial down the emotional reactivity, and then you can choose. And because narcissism is a spectrum disorder, that's a wide range, you can choose anything from light contact to in extremely abusive situations where no contact is just obvious. So a decision to have a civil connection is really the most common. This is where I will tell my patient, look, just be polite, happy birthday, just general respect. You don't have to engage very much with your parent, but in most cases it's just too painful to go completely no contact, and in some situations it's impossible to have any contact. So it's really about your judgment call and putting yourself first and what works for you, what works for your family. So I'm going to go to Shrink That Tune, and the tune for tonight is called Sasha Sloan, Older. I used to shut my door while my mother screamed in the kitchen. I'd turn up the music, get high, and try not to listen to every little fight, 'cause neither one was right. So obviously a chaotic household here. I swore I'd never be like them, but I was just a kid back then. So children make a decision, oh no, I'll never turn out like that. The older I get, the more I see my parents aren't heroes. They're just like me. I'll edit it a little bit. Vice versa. The person is turning out to be just like them, straight off the blueprint. And loving is hard. It doesn't always work. And I want to add, well, when you love the wrong person or you're addicted to the wrong person, it doesn't work because it's a one-way street. It's a vampiring effect. So this person, unfortunately, was investing in the wrong relationships. And loving is hard. It doesn't always work. Well, of course, you're going to invest in your parents because they're your parents, but then you can't conclude that all loving doesn't work. You just have to learn how to choose the partners that know how to synergize. I used to be mad, but now I know sometimes it's better to let someone go. It just hasn't hit me yet, the older I get. So sometimes you've got to choose yourself over other people, even if they're your parents or your best friend or your husband, your wife, your lover. I used to wonder why they could never be happy. I used to close my eyes and pray for a whole nother family. And so there it is, the pray that they'll get better, the pray and the hope that this will all go away. I swore I'd never be like them, but I was just a kid back then. They're just like me, and really this person has become just like them. And so sometimes it's better to just let someone go. It just hasn't hit me yet. So it's hard to face the truth. It's very, very painful to understand that our parents, our source, our supposed guide to life, our source of love and nurturance and unconditional love. It's very hard to face the music that not all parents are unconditionally loving. Not all parents are in the best interest of the growth of their children. And this is a really, really painful revelation. So painful that our society has suppressed this to the point where we are not confronting the cause. So again, I want to say that it's very, very bold for people to confront the cause therapeutically. You don't have to walk up to your parents and confront them, because that's not going to go well, I assure you. I've had people do that, and parents get defensive and all sorts of stuff like that. So I suggest that you do it in a therapeutic environment. Thank you so much for listening, and please feel free to get a copy of my book or request a consultation. Call the Psychological Healing Center and find out how you can go from this process of, I call it psychological prison, to unraveling this horrible system and see clearly again, so that you can have freedom around this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Good night, everyone.